was 14 years old. Nobody told him.
Wow.
So he knew what to say and handled it perfectly.
Let's see. So tell us what you really want your grandchildren to know about you. You have 22 of them, right? 22 grandchildren. Ours are the youngest, I'm happy to say.
It's hard to keep track of all that.
Yeah. But tell us
about
what
22 and a half or 23 right now. So.
And you have great grandchildren too. Let's see.
Yeah, I think the thing that people found it very unusual for me is that I've had a tremendous work ethic, not only in terms of time and effort, but also the organization in your mind of the activities so you don't waste the time. I like to see somebody that's a bricklayer and operate because he doesn't miss a stroke. He's bang, bang, bang. It just goes like clockwork. Well, that's the way I operate. When I was working full-time, for example, and going to college, 16 units at the same time, raising a family at the same time, if I hit a red light early in the day, it threw my whole schedule off for the next 12 hours. It just really, my time was very, very tight. I had everything down to the minute.
Okay.
But in order to organize it, I had to do it that way. And I would hope that some of these people would have as much drive as I've had to succeed. And
Okay. So drive.
intelligence to apply, to be creative and do something with their life besides just be Joe Lunch Bucket.
Okay, so tell us some things about Dottie that you want future generations to know.
Dottie's marvelous. She was just a marvelous person. I still miss her. Not only was she extremely intelligent, member of the National Honor Society, where one student per high school is chosen each year, but I probably couldn't have finished college without her because she has the vocabulary and so on that I lacked. And she just loved children. She just loved babies. You could see her eyes glow when she had a baby in her arms.
Mm-hmm.
So she was a marvelous wife. And when we get home at night, the house was always picked up. The children always looked nice, and they met Daddy at the door. And she just was a wonderful wife to me.
So just finishing up about Dottie, I guess. So you said she really loved children and grandchildren, and it seems like being a mom and a wife was really what her goal
Exactly.
was, right?
I always accused her of marrying me that I married her for her money, because when we got married, she had $50 and she didn't even know I had any savings at all. I had $1,000 saved at that time. My cars were paid for and so on. So I didn't have any debts. I had paid cash for everything I'd ever done in my life, all the cars I ever bought. And I bought my first new car at age 18 and paid cash for it.
Wow.
So after we got married, I told her if we had savings, that was equivalent to what would be maybe $20,000 today. So at age 21,
Sure.
that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so regarding any inheritance for future generations that will benefit from you, what do you hope they do and not do with money? What are those values that you want people to know about? So you can smile down from heaven and know, that's great, and that's what I was hoping you would do.
I hope I've made a financial beneficial difference in the lives of our children. I think we have, because I've been in a gifting program for more than a decade, which have helped out increase their lifestyle somewhat. But I don't think most people realize how difficult it is to accumulate money. If a person earns a wage of, say, $80,000 a year, after taxes, he's just eking by, can't really save any money. It's hard for a person to save $10,000 or $20,000 a year out of the savings net after taxes, instead of decide for future growth. They don't realize how hard it is to come by to get that $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000 asset base together so they can double from there. And the way I look at it is you double your assets if you make 16% a year, you double your assets in 5 years, and 10% would take 7 years to double, so someplace in between there. And they don't realize that for every dollar they invest today, and if it's done properly, will result in $4 10 years from now and $16 20 years from now.
Okay.
I would hope that they save the money, accumulate it, and spend the eggs rather than the principal amount of, don't kill the goose that lays the golden
Okay,
eggs.
I see. Okay, that's good advice. I think that's really good advice.
You're asking about estate taxes? That's a subject that requires daily constant attention.
Okay,
Because government will separate you from everything you have if you give them half a chance. Their attitude is, it's their money, not yours.
so you work diligently, from what I've understood for the last several years, that it's keeping the
Right.
estate taxes as minimal as possible and,
Right,
you know, to maximize the money going to you and your family rather than
right.
the
My,
government.
my goal about 5 years ago was to work my income tax down so that it reduced my taxes by $1 million per year reduction. Because I was paying $3 to $4 million a year taxes every while. And you do that by restructuring your activities and type of investments and so forth. Estate taxes are awful because it's unfortunate for a guy to have to sell the family farm rather than pass it on to his heirs, because the government owns half that farm the minute he dies, if he's above the exempted amounts of money.
Well, okay, what are some things if you could go back and change something from your past, is there anything you'd wanna change, do you think?
I know that people would put it on my tombstone, I wish I'd spent more time at the office. In my case, that's not the case, I probably should have spent less time at the office.
Less time at the office, okay?
I have some regrets like everybody else. I was so focused, I mean, on college, on getting it done, on my career, so focused that a lot of things I wish I would have done differently, I would do today, and spending more time with my kids. But the
Okay,
big event for us was the vacations every summer. We devoted 2 to 3 weeks of going back east every summer.
yeah,
You're asking about estate taxes. In the past year, I've taken steps that I believe will reduce our taxes by about $9 million in what I've done in the last 12 months. Through
wow,
a series of grantor annuity trusts, family limited partnerships, and other methodologies.
okay. So, what do you think is wrong with society today? Tell us about that, because it's very different today. We have Barack Obama's in office, and he's the president, the first African American ever, of course, and that's a huge change for our world. He's Democrat, so that's a difference from the last, 8 years. So,
Well, being a Demo-Republican, I can sympathize with the situation, but obviously I can't be happy the way the direction the country's going. I'm quite worried about it.
okay,
If I go back and look at the history a little bit, I believe the era of the 50s were the best period of time in the entire history of the country.
what do you think's changed since then?
Well, take a look at what they have then compared to what you have now. During the 50s, Eisenhower was the president, and he was on the golf course all the time, so they didn't pass any legislation. Income tax was 13% instead of 35% federal alone,
Wow,
10% state. People were coming back from the war, they didn't have houses, cars, or anything else. They had to buy and accumulate everything, so that was a great growth curve. If you invested in the stock market in the 50s, the longer you held your stocks and the better quality they were, the more money you made. If you owned Sears during the 50s, you made 5 times your assets in 10 years. Texaco 3 times your assets, for example. AT&T something less than that. But now it's a whole different ballgame. It's just a different world today.
right. What do you see that's different with families and children and, the,
Well, they grew up with plastic.
values, I
They grew up
guess?
with plastic for one thing. And when I was growing up, you saved the money and then you bought the washing machine,
Okay,
not the reverse.
sure,
It's so easy to flip out that plastic card and spend money now, worry about it at the end of the month. These people do not have the fear that people in our generation had of a depression.
so that was a value to keep money, to help you keep money in your pocket, was to not
Sure.
spend more than
Well,
you
use it
have.
wisely, that's all. Use
Sure.
your money wisely.
Right,
There's nothing wrong with spending money, everybody does it every day. But do things that are intelligent and get value for your money when you spend it.
So a lot of people seem to invest their money in real estate. What made you decide not to do that?
Real estate, like pharmacy, steel industry, or anything else, is an investment. It's a category of investment.
Mm-hmm.
And to my mind, it's greatly substandard place to invest. Real estate, to own your own home is wonderful. You should own your own home and have it paid off preferably.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not that good an investment. From a standpoint of taxes, you have to own a ton of real estate in order to get any real tax benefits.
So for the future generations, what do you think
Don't
about?
own real estate, own securities.
Okay.
And one of the mistakes I've made all my life is I've always been too conservative, believe it or not. I've amassed tens of millions of dollars of assets, I realize, but I've always been too conservative. I've always been underinvested and always waiting for the right time to do something.
Okay, and I know, talk about the liquidity of real estate versus securities and talk about what a security is, because remember this video will be seen by, your grandchildren and stuff, and
I experienced real estate one time. My neighbor's house they were selling my neighbor's house for $34,000. And I was tired of seeing people sell the houses for too cheap than where I thought they were, so I went and bought the darn thing. Boy, was that a mistake. And you try to sell a house and some woman comes along and says, well, that carpet will never go with my sofa, so I can't buy it. It's hard to sell it. And if you do sell it, they say it'll go into escrow for 60 or 90 days. What do you mean 90 days? When I sell a security, I get a report back in less than 60 seconds.
mm-hmm.
And it settles in 3 days.
So the liquidity is
If liquidity
something
is
that's
there,
important to you.
I don't like being in real estate because if you got a good property, you want to keep it. If you got a bad property, it's almost impossible to sell. But if I have a security that's not a good property or the outlook for the investment changed dramatically, I can push a button and be out in 3 minutes.
Okay, so that's very interesting. Okay.
In other words, I have better control over my investments. I have
Okay.
better access to information. I can diversify quickly. I could be in the steel industry one day and own Safeway stores the next.
Okay.
I get to decide every day what business I want to be in.
So do you think it's a good idea for, like, your grandchildren, since you've worked so much, and do you think it's a good idea for them to start working earlier, with earning an allowance? Did you give your kids an allowance? Was
I really don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think so. But we had a job chart. Everybody had
Okay.
assigned responsibilities,
Okay.
and we just took care of all their needs, so without having to give them a lot of pocket money
I
at
see.
times.
Okay. And they all went to Catholic school, or?
I believe they all went to Catholic school.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I know that you're a big car buff, so let's talk about cars. If you could build a classic.
I have a few of those.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. We'll talk about those. Talk about your cars that you love, and
Well, every time I go to a car auction, I go to buy a '57 Chevy convertible or a '59 Cadillac, and then I'm always outbid for those things, so I never end up with the car. I end up with something else.
so that's what you really want.
Oh, I'd love to. I'd trade both of my classic cars in. I sold one of them. I got two left. I trade them all in for one good '57 Chevrolet.
What cars do you have now?
I have a '56 Pontiac, which has been restored. It's a
Mhm.
beautiful car.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I've
Blue and
seen
white
it.
four-door hardtop.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's beautiful.
And I don't drive that because it doesn't drive all that well. It's a very, very heavy car. If you lean on the fender, it's not even going to dip. It's just solid like a tank. The other car in the garage, emphasized where the Mercedes sits outside, because I can buy a Mercedes any day of the week, but I can't go to get a '64 Chevrolet
Well,
that's
that's
brand
an
new any day of
interesting
the
way
week.
to look at it. That's true.
If police tell me that if they knew that '64 Impala was in the garage, they would break in to get a garage to get it. This happens to be a car which they call a Survivor, and that means it's a car that has all the original parts. It has the original spark plugs that came out of the factory.
Wow. Wow.
Car's yet to have its first tune-up.
Gosh.
There's no reason to have a tune-up. It's only about 45 years old.
45 years old.
Yeah, the car only has 12,000 miles on it.
Oh my gosh.
Had 8,000 miles when I got it, maybe 17 years ago. And I guess I've driven about 4,000 miles in 17 years.
Wow. Well, if you could build a classic car today, what would it be?
I think if they came out with something that's very popular, like the '57 Chevrolet,